Earth's pets tore through the Gorn invasion force, ripping throats, crushing bones, spraying viscera. The reptilian aliens never saw it coming. Moments before, Dr. Dylan Campbell had been giving police dog Rex a routine checkup at his Houston veterinary clinic. An emergency alert suddenly blared, alien ship inbound. A thunderous shockwave rattled the building. Dylan rushed outside. A 2-mile-long obsidian craft hovered menacingly overhead, casting an ominous shadow across downtown Houston. A guttural voice boomed from loudspeakers. "Attention, primitive species. We are the Gorn Dominion. Your planet is now a protectorate of the Gorn Empire. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." To punctuate the ultimatum, a brilliant plasma beam lanced from the ship, vaporizing several skyscrapers in blinding flashes. Gorn Commander Deneb appeared on massive view screens, his reptilian face sneering with superiority and contempt. "Capitulate now, humans, like so many other feeble species have before you. You cannot resist the might of the Gorn." What Deneb failed to realize was that Earth had faced extinction before, from the dinosaurs to the brink of nuclear Armageddon during the Cold War. Each time, humankind had prevailed through indomitable spirit, ingenuity, and the aid of their loyal animal companions. As human militaries worldwide mobilized to launch fierce counterattacks, they would once again call upon man's best friends to help send the Gorn invaders back to the stars. Earth's very survival depended on it. Dylan's pulse raced as he watched the Earth forces launch their counterattack against the looming Gorn ship. Missiles streaked through the sky, and fighter jets roared towards the alien invader, guns blazing. But the Gorn's advanced shields rippled and absorbed the barrage without so much as a flicker. Deneb's mocking laughter boomed from the view screens. "Foolish primates, your feeble weapons are useless against us. This pitiful display only proves how primitive you are. Your resistance is as meaningless as those furry little creatures you keep as pets. They serve no purpose except as food for superior species like us." To hammer home his point, a searing beam of crackling blue energy lanced out from the Gorn ship, spearing straight towards Dylan's veterinary clinic. The particle beam slammed into the building, instantly vaporizing it in a massive explosion of heat and light. The force of the blast sent Dylan tumbling to the ground, his ears ringing. Chunks of flaming debris rained down as Dylan staggered to his feet, coughing from the acrid smoke. His clinic was nothing but a smoldering crater. Nearby buildings had also been obliterated by the particle beam strike. "Rex, here, boy," Dylan called out desperately. A bark answered him, and he saw Rex limping out from behind a half-demolished wall, whimpering but alive. Dylan rushed over and scooped up the injured German shepherd, hurrying to his truck. After gently setting Rex on the passenger seat, Dylan floored the accelerator, speeding away from the destruction in downtown Houston. His cell phone had no signal, all communications apparently jammed by the aliens. "Don't worry, buddy, I know a place we can go," Dylan said to Rex, a plan forming in his mind. He would head to the remote cabin where he and his Marine veteran friends did their annual hunting trip. They could regroup there and figure out how to strike back at these alien bastards. As they raced out of the burning city, Dylan noticed something strange. Throngs of animals, both wild and domestic, were all frantically scurrying in the same direction towards the giant Gorn ship. Birds, squirrels, dogs, cats, even a tiger that must have escaped from the zoo. They all seemed agitated and single-mindedly focused on reaching the alien craft. Rex started whining and scrabbling at the door, desperate to get out and join the strange animal migration. Dylan reached over to soothe him. "Easy, boy. You're in no shape for whatever the hell that is." He shook his head, perplexed but needing to stay focused on reaching the cabin. There would be time to wonder what the odd animal behavior meant later. Right now, he had to link up with his battle-hardened friends. Earth was depending on them to find a way to take the fight to these scaly alien invaders, no matter how outmatched the human forces seemed. Dylan gripped the steering wheel tighter, heart made, determined to make these Gorn bastards pay for underestimating mankind and their loyal animal companions. Dylan pulled up to the old hunting cabin nestled deep in the woods. His marine buddies were already there waiting for him, their trucks parked haphazardly in the dirt driveway. Jack, a mountain of a man with a bushy beard, walked up and clapped Dylan on the shoulder as he got out. "Damn good to see you, brother. Wish it were under better circumstances." Chris, lean and wiry with a mop of unruly hair, was already typing away furiously on a laptop perched on the hood of his Jeep. "I've been monitoring communications. It's a shit show out there. These Gorn fuckers have us outgunned and outmatched." "Tell me something I don't know," Dylan said grimly, gently lifting a whimpering Rex out of the cab and setting him down. The other dogs, a motley pack of hunting hounds and retired military working dogs, sniffed at Rex curiously. Miguel, silent and watchful, emerged from the shadows, his sniper rifle slung over his shoulder. "I've been in contact with some friends in various agencies. These scaly bastards have done this before. Dozens of worlds, all crushed beneath their heel. Superior tech, ships, weapons, we don't stand a chance." As the somber news sank in, the men headed inside the rustic cabin to pore over the intel and try to formulate some kind of plan. But before they could even sit down, an eerie sound made the hair on the backs of their necks stand up. The dogs, Rex included, all started howling in chilling unison, their faces pointed towards the sky. "What the hell?" Jack muttered, reaching for his rifle. Dylan looked out the window and saw a massive flock of birds darkening the sky like a cloud of locusts, all flying with singular purpose towards the Gorn ship in the distance. A memory niggled at the back of his mind, something from a nature documentary he'd watched with Rex curled up at his feet. It was about how animals could sense impending natural disasters long before any human technology could detect them. "They know something we don't," Dylan said slowly, wheels turning in his head. "They can sense something off about these aliens." His musings were interrupted by a commotion outside, a thundering of hooves and paws. They rushed to the window and stared in disbelief at the incredible sight before them. A herd of deer, a pack of wolves, and a huge grizzly bear charged past the cabin, paying no heed to each other or their usual predator-prey dynamics. They were all single-mindedly determined to reach the alien ship, running towards it like moths to a flame. The men exchanged significant looks as realization dawned. The animals weren't just aware of the Gorn, they were drawn to them in a way they couldn't understand. But if they could find out what that was, maybe they could use it to their advantage somehow, find a chink in the alien's armor. "Saddle up, boys," Dylan said, checking his rifle. "We're following them. With any luck, they'll lead us to some answers." They quickly loaded up on guns, ammo, and supplies. Then they hopped in their trucks and took off after the animals, towards the looming obsidian ship that threatened everything they held dear. Towards the Gorn who thought Earth would be just another easy conquest. But they had no idea who they were fucking with. They were about to find out what happened when you backed mankind into a corner, when you underestimated the power of the bond between humans and the creatures they shared their world with. The convoy of trucks raced towards Houston, the men grim-faced and white-knuckled as they followed the tide of animals surging ahead. As they reached the outskirts of the ravaged city, an unbelievable scene unfolded before them. The streets were a roiling mass of creatures, a mind-boggling menagerie of beasts united in singular purpose. Dogs and cats ran alongside wolves and cougars, horses galloped next to herds of deer, rats and squirrels scurried underfoot. Birds of every feather darkened the skies. All of them, predator and prey alike, rushed headlong towards the colossal Gorn ship like a tidal wave of fur, feathers, and claws. The alien soldiers guarding the ship's perimeter seemed utterly flummoxed by this development. Their weapons, designed to atomize buildings and vaporize armored vehicles, were comically ineffective against the small, fast-moving targets swarming towards them. They fired wildly into the horde, energy pulses sizzling the air, but for every hapless creature vaporized, a dozen more surged forward to take its place. Suddenly, Rex wrenched free from Dylan's grasp, nearly pulling his arm from its socket. The German shepherd sprinted into the fray, his injuries forgotten, consumed by the same inexorable instinct that had gripped his animal brethren. "Rex, no!" Dylan shouted, leaping from the truck and racing after his faithful companion. His friends were hot on his heels, rifles at the ready as they plunged into the churning sea of animals. They could only watch in slack-jawed amazement as the creatures threw themselves at the Gorn ship with savage abandon. Claws scrabbled against the hull, jaws snapped at conduits, talons raked across sensor arrays. The ship's surface, once sleek and impenetrable, was soon pockmarked with scratches and dents from the relentless onslaught. The Gorn defenders fired into the mass of animals with increasing desperation, emerald bolts of energy, cutting down scores of creatures at a time. But it was like trying to hold back the ocean with a bucket. The beasts climbed over the smoking corpses of their fallen brethren, hurling themselves at the ship with even greater ferocity. And then, miraculously, impossibly, a crack appeared in the hull. A jagged fissure that spread like a spider's web across the obsidian surface, a viscous green fluid, thick and foul-smelling, began to ooze from the breach. The animals went berserk at the sight and stench of it, tearing at the wound with renewed frenzy. "Holy shit," Miguel breathed, lowering his rifle. "They're actually doing it. They're breaching the hull." Dylan's mind raced as he watched the incredible scene unfold. The pieces fell into place with stunning clarity. The animals could sense something about the ship that human technology had missed. Some critical vulnerability in its composition, a chink in the alien armor. He turned to Chris, eyes blazing with sudden hope. "We need to get this intel to command. If we can figure out what the animals are keying in on, we might actually have a shot at taking these bastards down." Chris nodded sharply, already yanking out his encrypted comm unit. His fingers flew across the keys as he fired off a message to their contacts in the Resistance, informing them of this game-changing development. "I just hope there's still someone out there to get the message," he muttered grimly. "The way things are going—" He was cut off by a deafening crack, like a gigantic pane of glass shattering. The Gorn ship shuddered as an entire section of its hull gave way, gouts of emerald fluid spraying out, drenching the ecstatic animals in noxious green gore. A cheer went up from the men, primal and fierce. The Gorn were about to learn a hard lesson, Dylan thought savagely. They had come to the wrong planet, fucked with the wrong species. Man and beast, united against a common foe. The invaders would rue the day they underestimated the power of that bond. He raised his rifle and charged towards the breached ship, his battle cry echoing through the war-torn streets. It was swiftly taken up by his friends, by the soldiers and citizens of Houston, by the animals that fought at their side. A thunderous roar of defiance that shook the earth and sky. The war was nowhere near the end. But in that moment, as he ran alongside his faithful dog and his band of brothers, Dylan knew one thing with diamond-hard certainty. Earth would not go quietly into the night. They would fight to their last breath with tooth and claw and gun and blade. And may God have mercy on any alien son of a bitch that stood in their way. Inside the Gorn ship, Commander Deneb hit his fist on the console, his reptilian eyes narrowing to furious slits as he watched the chaos unfolding on the monitor. The once pristine hull of his mighty warship was now pockmarked with dents and gashes, swarming with a writhing mass of earth creatures. It was unthinkable, impossible, and yet it was happening before his very eyes. "Deploy the heavy weapons," Deneb roared at his crew, spittle flying from his fanged maw. "Incinerate those wretched beasts!" The Gorn soldiers scrambled to obey, arming the ship's formidable arsenal of plasma cannons and particle beams. But before they could unleash their devastating firepower, Deneb's second-in-command, a spindly science officer named Zorgax, spoke up. "Commander, wait! I've detected something unusual in the creature's biochemistry." Deneb whirled on him, eyes blazing. "I don't care about their biochemistry, you fool. I want them exterminated." But Zorgax persisted, his voice trembling slightly as he met his commander's wrathful gaze. "Sir, the animals possess a unique enzyme that's reacting with our ship's outer coating. It's breaking down the molecular structure." Deneb stared at him, uncomprehending for a moment. Then the implications sank in and his eyes widened in disbelief. "That's why our shields are useless against them," he hissed. Their primitive biology is exploiting a weakness in our advanced technology. Zorgax nodded, swallowing hard. Yes, Commander. And if the humans learn of this... They won't, Deneb snarled, cutting him off. He jabbed a clawed finger at the science officer. Find a way to neutralize that enzyme, Zorgax. And do it fast. We cannot allow this information to spread. As Zorgax scurried away to his lab, Deneb turned back to the view screen, his gaze smoldering with rage. He would make an example of these humans and their infernal creatures. They would learn the price of defiance. His eyes locked on the largest concentration of animals, a seething mass of fur and flesh near the ship's damaged hull. Deneb's lips peeled back in a vicious grin as he targeted the plasma cannon. "Fire!" he hissed, his finger stabbing down on the firing stud. A blinding lance of energy erupted from the ship's underside, screaming towards the hapless creatures below. But at the last instant, a colossal shape burst from the churning waters of the bay. A blue whale, largest of Earth's creatures, breached the surface directly in the path of the plasma beam. The beam struck the whale's massive body and was absorbed, its destructive energy dissipating harmlessly into the Leviathan's bulk. Deneb gaped in shock as the whale's skin began to glow an uncanny blue, pulsing with the absorbed energy. Before he could react, the whale breached again, its titanic form arcing through the air with impossible grace. Time seemed to slow as the glowing Leviathan hurtled directly towards the Gorn ship's weakened hull, a living battering ram powered by stolen alien energy. Deneb could only watch in mute horror as the whale struck the hull with a cataclysmic impact that shook the ship to its very core. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks, alarms blared, and Gorn crew members were hurled off their feet. Through the cacophony, Zorgax's panicked voice crackled over the intercom. "Hull breach in Sector 7, emergency force fields failing." Deneb staggered to his feet, his eyes wild, his once pristine uniform torn and scorched. The impossible had happened. His invincible warship, the pride of the Gorn Dominion, had been crippled by a pack of primitive beasts and their hairless ape masters. As the deck bucked and heaved beneath him, and the screams of his crew filled the air, Deneb's shock gave way to a cold, implacable rage. He would not be defeated like this. Not by these savages and their filthy animals. He would destroy them all, even if he had to burn their wretched planet to cinders in the process. Earth would learn the folly of standing against the might of the Gorn Empire, and its fall would serve as a lesson to any other upstart worlds that dared to resist. Deneb's claws curled into fists as he stalked towards the flickering view screen, his eyes locked on the glowing whale that had breached his ship's defenses. The battle was a long way to go, and the Gorn commander had no intention of losing. The colossal whale smashed into the Gorn ship with the force of 1,000 freight trains. The impact resonated through every deck and bulkhead, a shuddering, screeching cacophony of rending metal and shattering circuitry. In the command center, Deneb was hurled from his seat like a rag doll, his head slamming against a sparking console with a sickening crack. He crumpled to the floor, green blood oozing from a gash on his brow. Zorgax fared little better, clinging white-knuckled to his station as the deck bucked and heaved beneath him. His spindly fingers flew across the controls, desperately trying to stabilize the failing systems. Alarms shrieked like tortured banshees, bathing the bridge in pulsing red light. The acrid stench of burning insulation and spilled coolant choked the air. On the flickering view screen, the ground spun dizzyingly as the crippled ship lurched and wobbled, its anti-gravity engines sputtering and wheezing. Far below, Dylan and his team watched in slack-jawed amazement as the once mighty vessel began its death spiral, belching gouts of oily smoke from a dozen gaping wounds. The blue whale had done its job well, caving in an entire section of the hull and exposing the ship's vulnerable innards. "This is it, boys," Dylan said, his voice tight with barely suppressed excitement. "That thing's going down and we're going to be there to kick 'em while they're vulnerable." He grabbed his comm unit and hailed the resistance, his words tumbling out in a breathless rush. "The ship's hit. Repeat, The ship is going down. The animals found a weak spot, some kind of enzyme that eats through their armor. We need to hit them now while they're scattered and disoriented." The response was immediate and electric. Across the globe, rebel cells and makeshift militias mobilized, rallying every creature they could muster. Dogs, cats, horses, even zoo animals and wildlife, all were enlisted in the fight, an unprecedented alliance of man and beast against a common foe. As the Gorn ship shuddered to a smoking halt, half embedded in the ruined landscape, the Earth forces struck. A tide of fur, feathers and flesh surged towards the downed vessel, swarming over its carcass like army ants. Gorn soldiers staggered from the wreckage, disoriented and bleeding, only to be set upon by packs of snarling dogs and screeching hawks. In the chaos, Dylan and his team made their move. They charged up the ship's buckled ramp, weapons at the ready, adrenaline surging through their veins. Rex bounded ahead, his keen nose leading them through the twisted labyrinth of corridors and smoke-choked chambers. They encountered pockets of resistance along the way, Gorn troopers trying frantically to regroup and mount a defense. But the men were in their element now, years of training and combat experience guiding their every move. Jack bowled through a knot of aliens like a rampaging grizzly, his shotgun booming in the confined space. Chris and Miguel moved in perfect sync, one laying down covering fire while the other advanced, leapfrogging their way towards the command deck. At last they reached their goal. Blasting through the heavy doors with a breaching charge, they stormed into the bridge, guns leveled, scanning for threats. Chris spotted Zorgax, hunched over a sparking console, and dropped him with a well-aimed stun bolt, the alien crumpling like a puppet with its strings cut. Miguel swept the room, his rifle at his shoulder, but the only other occupant was the unconscious form of Deneb, sprawled in a spreading pool of his own blood. Dylan frowned, an uneasy feeling settling in his gut. Where was the wily Gorn commander? Surely he wouldn't abandon his ship, even in its death throes. He opened his mouth to voice his concerns, but before he could speak, a guttural roar split the air. A nightmarish shape burst from a concealed hatch, all teeth and claws and blazing reptilian eyes. Deneb had been waiting for them, biding his time, and now he struck with all the savage fury of a cornered beast. The Gorn commander slammed into Dylan, knocking him to the deck, his rifle skittering away. Deneb reared up, his jaws gaping, ready to tear out the human's throat. But in that moment, a brown and black blur hurtled through the air, a snarl of pure fury erupting from its throat. Rex clamped his jaws around the alien's arm, biting down with all his strength. Deneb howled in pain and rage, thrashing wildly to dislodge the dog. But Rex held on with steadfast perseverance, buying Dylan precious seconds to scramble for his weapon. The Marine's fingers closed around the rifle's grip, and he rolled to his feet, bringing the gun to bear. Deneb froze, Rex's teeth still buried in his flesh, as he found himself staring down the barrel of Dylan's rifle. "It's over, you scaly bastard," Dylan growled, his finger tightening on the trigger. "Stand down or I'll blow your fucking head off." Deneb glared at him with pure, seething hatred, but even he could see the truth. His ship was in ruins, his soldiers scattered and broken. Earth's creatures had proven to be more than a match for Gorn's superior technology and weaponry. Slowly, painfully, the Gorn commander raised his hands in surrender, Rex still clinging stubbornly to his arm. Dylan kept his rifle trained on Deneb as Jack moved in with a set of heavy restraints, binding the alien's wrists and ankles. "You haven't won, human," Deneb hissed, his eyes burning with malice. "The Gorn Empire will not forget this insult. We will return with 1,000 ships and 1,000,000 soldiers. Your world will burn, and your precious beasts with it." Dylan leaned in close, his voice low and deadly serious. "Maybe. But today we kicked your scaly ass. Today we showed the galaxy what happens when you fuck with Earth. And if you come back, we'll be waiting, with every tooth and claw at our disposal. You'll never take our planet, not while we still draw breath." With that, he nodded to his team, and together they hauled Deneb to his feet. They dragged the snarling Gorn out of the ruined ship, into the waiting arms of the Resistance. All around them the battle still raged, humans and animals fighting side by side against the scattered remnants of the invasion force. It would be a long, hard road to drive the aliens from their world entirely. But in that moment, as he stood amidst the smoke and carnage with his loyal dog at his side and his brothers in arms around him, Dylan knew they had achieved the impossible. They had struck the first blow against the Gorn Empire. They had lit the spark of resistance. And no matter what came next, they would face it the same way they had faced this challenge, together, as one family, one world, united against the darkness. The battle was far from finished, but Earth had drawn its line in the sand, and woe betide any alien invader who dared to cross it. The command center erupted into chaos as the hidden door burst open, revealing a snarling Deneb. The Gorn commander's eyes blazed with unhinged fury as he held up a strange, glowing device. "You think you've won, don't you?" he hissed, his voice dripping with venom. "But I still have one last card to play." He thrust the device forward, its eerie light casting sinister shadows across his reptilian features. "This is a biopulse emitter. With one press of this button, it will send out a signal that will drive your precious animals insane, causing them to turn on each other and on you. Earth will be torn apart by the very creatures you rely on." Dylan and his team snapped their weapons up, training them on Deneb, but they hesitated, not daring to fire while the alien's finger hovered over the emitter's trigger. One twitch, and all their efforts could be undone in an instant. Dylan stepped forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Deneb, it's over," he said, keeping his voice steady, despite the tension thrumming through his body. "Your ship is down. Your forces are overwhelmed. Surrender now, and we can end this peacefully." Deneb's laughter was a harsh, grating sound edged with madness. "Peace," he spat, his finger trembling on the button. "There can be no peace between us, human. You've humiliated me, destroyed my ship, and ruined my plans. If I can't have Earth, then no one can." Time seemed to slow as Deneb's finger started to descend, the emitter's glow intensifying. Dylan tensed, his mind racing for a solution, but before he could act, a brown and black blur shot past him. Rex lunged at Deneb, a snarl ripping from his throat. The German shepherd's teeth sank into the Gorn's arm, biting down with all his strength. Deneb howled in agony, his grip on the emitter slipping. The device tumbled from his grasp, clattering to the deck. Dylan dove for it, his fingers closing around the emitter a heartbeat before Deneb's could reach it. He rolled to his feet, the device clutched tightly to his chest. Deneb staggered back, clutching his bleeding arm. Rex stood between him and Dylan, hackles raised, fangs bared. The Gorn commander's eyes darted from the dog to the emitter, desperation warring with defeat on his face. "It's over, Deneb," Dylan said, his voice hard as steel. "You've lost." Deneb's shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of him. He slumped to his knees, his head bowed in surrender. Chris moved in, pulling out a set of restraints and securing the alien's wrists behind his back. Dylan looked down at the emitter in his hand, a chill running down his spine, as he realized just how close they had come to catastrophe, if Rex hadn't acted when he did. He shook his head, pushing the thought aside. They had won. Earth was safe thanks to the courage and loyalty of its animal defenders. But as he met Rex's eyes, saw the intelligence and understanding shining there, Dylan knew that this was just the beginning. The Gorn had underestimated the strength of the bond between humans and animals, and it had cost them dearly. Now it was time to show the galaxy what Earth was truly capable of, united as one against any threat that dared to challenge them. As Dylan emerged from the battered Gorn ship, the scene before him was one of controlled chaos. Animals and humans worked side by side, rounding up the remaining alien soldiers. The once proud Gorn warriors seemed to have lost their will to fight, their spirit broken by the capture of their leader and the destruction of their ship. Everywhere Dylan looked, he saw the resistance taking control. Police officers marched Gorn prisoners into waiting vans, while soldiers secured key buildings and infrastructure. Medics tended to the wounded, both human and animal alike. It was a surreal sight, but one that filled Dylan with a sense of pride and hope. As he watched, Rex trotted up to him, a police officer at his side. The German shepherd's tail wagged with excitement, and Dylan couldn't help but grin. He knelt down and ruffled Rex's fur, murmuring praise for his bravery. "Good boy, Rex. You saved the day, you know that?" Rex barked happily, his tongue lolling out in a canine grin. The police officer chuckled and gave the dog a pat on the head. "He's a hero, that one. We couldn't have done it without him and the other animals." Dylan nodded, his mind already racing with the implications of what they had learned. He stood up and scanned the crowd, spotting Zorgax being treated for his wounds under the watchful eye of a guard. He strode over, his curiosity getting the better of him. "Zorgax, I need to ask you something. Why did the enzyme in Earth's animals affect your ship? What's it made of?" The Gorn scientist looked up at him, his reptilian eyes dull with defeat. For a moment Dylan thought he might refuse to answer, but then Zorgax sighed and spoke, his voice a raspy whisper. "Our ships are not built like yours. They are grown from a biometallic compound, strong yet light and able to repair itself. But the enzyme in your creatures, it is a natural counter to this material. We have never encountered anything like it before." Dylan's eyes widened as the pieces fell into place. If Earth's animals could defeat the Gorn's advanced technology, then perhaps they held the key to protecting the planet from future threats. He turned to Chris, who had been listening in on the conversation. "Contact the resistance leadership. We need to study this enzyme, find ways to harness its potential. With the Gorn threat neutralized, we can focus on preparing for whatever else might be out there." Chris nodded, already pulling out his comm unit. "On it, boss. This could change everything." As the implications sank in, Dylan felt a renewed sense of purpose. Earth had faced its greatest challenge and emerged victorious, thanks in no small part to the courage and loyalty of its animal allies. Now, it was time to build on that victory, to use the knowledge they had gained to ensure the planet's safety for generations to come. There was still much work to be done, but for the first time since the invasion began, Dylan allowed himself to feel a glimmer of hope. Earth had proven itself to be more than just another primitive world to be conquered. It was a force to be reckoned with, a planet of warriors and survivors who would never bow to any invader no matter how powerful. And as he looked around at the scene of triumph and solidarity, at the humans and animals standing shoulder to shoulder, Dylan knew that this was just the beginning. Earth would face the future head-on, united and unafraid, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The resistance leadership wasted no time in acting on Dylan's proposal. Top scientists from around the world were brought in to study the enzyme, to unravel its secrets and find ways to weaponize it against potential future threats. Zorgax, seeking to atone for his role in the invasion, proved to be an invaluable asset. He worked tirelessly with the Earth scientists, sharing his knowledge of Gorn technology and biology. Together, they made rapid progress, developing new alloys and defense systems that incorporated the enzyme's unique properties. As the weeks turned into months, Earth's defenses grew stronger than ever before. Military bases were retrofitted with enzyme-based shielding, while new fleets of ships and aircraft were built using the revolutionary biometallic compounds reverse-engineered from the Gorn technology. But perhaps the most significant change was in the relationship between humans and animals. The bond that had been forged in the heat of battle only grew stronger as time passed. Animals were no longer seen as mere pets or beasts of burden, but as true partners and allies in the defense of Earth. Special training programs were established, designed to harness the unique abilities of different species. Dogs like Rex became invaluable members of military and police units, their keen senses and unwavering loyalty making them ideal for a wide range of missions. Birds of prey were trained as aerial scouts, their sharp eyes able to spot potential threats from miles away. Even the might of the great whales was harnessed, with pods of the giant mammals serving as living submarines, patrolling the oceans and standing ready to defend against any undersea attack. Through it all, Dylan and his team remained at the forefront of Earth's defense efforts. They traveled the globe, sharing their experiences and expertise with militaries and resistance groups alike. They became symbols of Earth's indomitable spirit, living proof that no challenge was too great, no enemy too powerful, as long as humans and animals stood together. And so as Earth looked to the stars, ready to take its place among the galactic community, it did so with a newfound sense of unity and purpose. The scars of the Gorn invasion would never fade completely, but they served as a constant reminder of what had been overcome, and of the strength that lay within the heart of every living creature on the planet. Earth was ready for whatever the future might bring, thanks to the courage and sacrifice of its human and animal defenders. And as Dylan looked up at the night sky, he knew that somewhere out there, the Gorn and other potential enemies were looking back, watching and waiting. But they would find no easy prey here. Only a world united, a planet of warriors and survivors, ready to fight for its place among the stars. Earth had earned its freedom, and it would never let it go again. The resistance base buzzed with activity as Dylan strode through the halls, Rex at his heels. Scientists and soldiers alike nodded in greeting as he passed, a newfound respect in their eyes. Dylan had become something of a legend in the months since the Gorn invasion, his name spoken in the same breath as the greatest heroes of Earth's history. But Dylan knew that the true heroes were the ones who had given their lives in defense of the planet, both human and animal alike. He thought of the brave souls who had fallen in the final battle against the Gorn, of the countless animals who had sacrificed themselves to turn the tide of the war. Their sacrifices would not be forgotten, Dylan vowed silently. He would make sure of that. He reached the command center and stepped inside, the room falling silent as he entered. The resistance leaders were gathered around a holographic display, their faces grim. "What's the situation?" Dylan asked, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. Chris stepped forward, his fingers dancing across the controls. The hologram shifted, revealing a strangely shaped craft in orbit above Earth. "We've got an unknown contact just entered the system. It doesn't match any known Gorn or Earth designs." Dylan frowned, his eyes narrowing as he studied the image. The craft was sleek and angular, its hull pulsing with an eerie green light. Something about it set his teeth on edge, a primal sense of wrongness that he couldn't quite put into words. "Have they made any attempts to communicate?" Miguel shook his head. "Negative, they're just sitting there watching us." Dylan's mind raced, weighing the possibilities. It could be a new ally drawn by the stories of Earth's victory against the Gorn, or it could be a new enemy seeking to test the planet's defenses. There was only one way to find out. He turned to Chris, his decision made. "Hail them, let's see what they want." Chris nodded, his fingers already flying across the console. A moment later, a chime sounded, indicating that a channel had been opened. "Unknown vessel, this is Earth Defense Command. Please identify yourself and state your intentions." For a long moment there was only silence. Then a voice crackled over the speakers, harsh and guttural like the grinding of metal on stone. "Earthlings, we have heard of your victory against the Gorn, most impressive for such a primitive species." Dylan bristled at the condescension in the alien's tone, but he kept his voice steady as he replied, "We're full of surprises. Now, who are you and what do you want with Earth?" The voice chuckled, a sound like the scraping of claws on bone. "We are the Zorgax Collective, and we want what any advanced civilization wants: resources, territory, slaves." Dylan's blood ran cold as the implications sank in. The Zorgax, whoever or whatever they were, weren't here to make friends. They were here to conquer. He looked around the room at the grim faces of his fellow defenders. They had all known that this day would come, that the Gorn were just the first of many potential threats to Earth's safety. But now that it was here, the reality of it was almost too much to bear. But as he looked into their eyes, he saw something else there too. A steely grit, a persistence that would not be broken. They had faced down the Gorn and emerged victorious. They would face this new threat too, and any others that might come after. Earth would never surrender, never bow to the will of any invader. As long as its people and animals stood together, it would always be free. Dylan turned back to the console, his eyebrows furrowed. "Zorgax Collective, this is Earth Defense Command. We will not surrender, and we will not be enslaved. If you want our planet, you'll have to take it by force, and we will fight you every step of the way." The alien voice laughed again, a sound like the shattering of glass. "So be it, Earthlings. Prepare yourselves. The Zorgax are coming." The channel closed with a burst of static, leaving the command center in stunned silence. For a moment no one spoke, the weight of the moment hanging heavy in the air. Then Dylan straightened, his eyes blazing with a fierce, unyielding light. "You heard them? The Zorgax are coming. But they'll find us ready. We've beaten the Gorn, and we'll beat them too. For Earth, for freedom, for every living thing on this planet. We'll fight and we'll win, no matter the cost." A cheer went up from the assembled defenders, a roar of defiance that shook the very walls of the command center. And in that moment, Dylan knew that Earth would never be truly conquered, not as long as its people and animals stood together, united in the face of any foe. The battle was just beginning, but Earth was ready, and it would never ever surrender. In the weeks following the Gorn's defeat, Earth underwent a rapid metamorphosis. The captured alien technology was reverse-engineered and adapted, leading to quantum leaps in medicine, energy production, and space exploration. Cancer, once a scourge on humanity, was eradicated within days thanks to Gorn medical knowledge. Clean, abundant energy flowed from advanced reactors, ending the world's reliance on fossil fuels overnight. Dylan, his team, and Rex were celebrated as the saviors of Earth. They couldn't walk down a street without being mobbed by grateful crowds. Rex's furry face graced posters, T-shirts, and murals in every city, the loyal German shepherd becoming a global symbol of Earth's indomitable spirit. But even as the world rejoiced, Dylan couldn't shake a nagging unease. The Gorn had been just the first, a vanguard of the dangers lurking in the cosmos. With Earth now a known player on the galactic stage, it was only a matter of time before another threat reared its head. He pored over the reports flooding in from astronomer friends. A spike in gamma-ray bursts from a distant sector, unidentified ships skirting the edges of the solar system, whispers of something called the Zorgax Collective, rippling through the chatter of newly contactable civilizations. The signs were there, for those with eyes to see. Earth needed to be ready. Dylan threw himself into the work with laser focus. He assembled a crack team of Earth's brightest scientists, most seasoned soldiers, and fiercest animal trainers. Together, they launched the Terran Defense Initiative, a global effort to bolster the planet's defenses against any and all extraterrestrial threats. At the heart of the initiative was a revolutionary new breed of spacecraft, codename Fenrir. Grown from the same biometallic alloys as the Gorn ships, but infused with the potent animal enzyme that had been their undoing, the Fenrir ships were unlike anything Earth had ever produced. Sleek organic curves melded seamlessly with jam-packed armaments, hulls pulsed with bioluminescent circuitry, self-repairing and adapting to the rigors of space. But the real breakthrough was the interface, genetically engineered neural links that allowed pilots to bond with their ships on a primal instinctual level. And at each pilot's side, cored in every ship's DNA, an animal co-pilot, a hawk's unblinking eye to scan for targets, a wolf's pack instincts to coordinate fleet movements, an elephant's titanic memory to navigate the stars, the abilities of Earth fauna elevated to cosmic significance. Dylan oversaw the Fenrir's shakedown flights, Rex never far from his side. He watched as the great silver ships lifted from their berths on pillars of blue plasma, the thrum of their engines sending chills down his spine. This was the future of Earth's defense, the key to their survival in a universe that had just grown infinitely larger and more dangerous. As the Fenrir vanished into the heavens, Dylan laid a hand on Rex's graying head. The old dog leaned into his touch, tactical vest gleaming with insignia. They had come so far from that fateful day in the veterinary clinic when the Gorn first darkened Earth's skies. The things they had seen, the battles they had fought, the bond they had forged in the crucible of war. Dylan knew more challenges lay ahead. The Zorgax and others like them would not be far behind. The battle for Earth, for the very soul of humanity, was just beginning, but as he looked out over the launch complex, as the roar of the Fenrir echoed in his ears, he felt a flicker of something he hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. Earth was rising, a world united as never before, and with their animal allies at their side, Dylan knew they would face the future head-on, unafraid and unbowed. The stars beckoned, a frontier of infinite promise and peril. And Earth would meet it with claws and courage as one. The Terran Defense Initiative surged forward, an unprecedented global effort united in common purpose. Across the world, shipyards sprung up like gleaming steel forests, churning out Fenrir craft at a breathtaking pace. Pilot schools opened their doors, welcoming the best and brightest from every nation, every walk of life. In the blistering deserts of the American Southwest, Dylan oversaw the construction of Starbase Alpha, the nerve center of Earth's new space fleet. He stood on the observation deck as the first wave of Fenrir ships returned from their shakedown cruise, their hulls scoured by cosmic radiation and micrometeorites. The exhausted but exhilarated pilots disembarked, their animal co-pilots trotting at their heels. They swapped stories of skimming the rings of Saturn, of diving through the roiling storms of Jupiter. They spoke of a universe more vast and beautiful than they had ever imagined, and of the profound bond they had forged with their ships and their animal partners. As Dylan listened, he felt a swell of pride. These were Earth's defenders, the tip of the spear against the unknown. They came from every corner of the globe, every race and creed, but they were united in their courage, their dedication, their unbreakable spirit. In the hangars, teams of engineers swarmed over the Fenrir, repairing battle damage, upgrading systems, fine-tuning the delicate biomechanical interfaces. Xenobiologists studied the captured Gorn technology, gleaning new insights into the workings of the universe. And in the training halls, a new generation of recruits drilled tirelessly, honing their skills and forging unbreakable bonds with their animal co-pilots. Rex, now grizzled and grey but still sharp as ever, served as a living symbol, a reminder of the power of the human-animal bond. As the Fenrir fleet grew, so too did humanity's reach. Exploration ships ventured out to the stars, seeking new worlds, new allies, new opportunities. Trade routes opened up, as Earth took its first tentative steps into the galactic economy. Diplomats met with 100 alien species, forging treaties and alliances, learning the ways of the cosmos. But always, the spectre of the Zorgax loomed, a shadow on the edge of every triumph. Whispers grew of their vast empire, their ruthless conquests, their implacable hatred for all things living. Gorn prisoners spoke of them in hushed tones, as a force of nature, an unstoppable tide of destruction. Earth knew that a reckoning was coming, and so they prepared, with the Fenrir as their sword and shield, and the unbreakable bond of human and animal as their greatest strength. On the front lines of this effort stood Dylan, Rex ever at his side, a stalwart guardian against the gathering storm. He knew the fight of their lives was coming, but he also knew that Earth would face it as one, united in courage and purpose. The Gorn had been just the first test, a crucible that had forged them into something new, something stronger. Now, as the Zorgax cast their shadow across the stars, Earth stood ready, ready to fight, ready to defend, ready to stand as a beacon of hope in a universe consumed by darkness. The battle for the future was about to begin, and Dylan knew with a certainty that blazed in his heart like a newborn star that Earth would not face it alone. They had each other, and they had the courage of their convictions. And most of all, they had the unbreakable bond between human and animal, a bond that had already saved them once and would save them again in the trials to come. Come what may, Earth would stand, and the universe would tremble before its dedication. Alarms blared through the halls of Starbase Alpha, red lights pulsing in urgent warning. Dylan raced to the command center, Rex bounding at his heels. The doors slid open with a hiss, revealing a scene of controlled chaos. "Report," Dylan barked, striding to the central holotable. Chris looked up from his console, his face grim. "We've got an unidentified vessel at the edge of the solar system. It's massive, sir, bigger than anything we've seen before." The holotable flickered to life, displaying a grainy image of the alien ship. It was a behemoth, a jagged mass of dark metal that seemed to swallow the stars around it. Dylan felt a chill run down his spine. "Have we tried hailing them?" Miguel shook his head. "No response on any frequency. It's like they're ignoring us." Dylan frowned, a sense of unease growing in his gut. "Prep the fleet. I want our best ships and crews out there. We need to find out what we're dealing with." The command crew sprang into action, issuing orders and coordinating the launch. Within minutes, a dozen Fenrir-class ships were rocketing out of the starbase, their bioengineered hulls glistening in the starlight. Dylan settled into the command chair of his own ship, the Valkyrie. Rex took his place at his side, his tactical vest filled with sensors and interface jacks. The cockpit hummed to life around them, the neural link connecting Dylan's mind to the ship's systems. "All ships form up on me," he ordered over the comm. "Approach with caution. We don't know what this thing is capable of." The fleet assumed a diamond formation, the Valkyrie at its head. They closed in on the alien vessel, sensors probing for any sign of activity, but the ship remained silent, an enigmatic monolith in the void. As they drew nearer, Dylan's unease deepened. There was something about the ship's design that set his teeth on edge, a wrongness that he couldn't quite put into words. Rex whined softly, his ears flattening against his skull. "Easy, boy," Dylan murmured, reaching down to scratch the dog's head. "We'll get to the bottom of this." Suddenly, a blinding beam of energy lanced out from the alien ship, striking the Fenrir fleet with devastating precision. Hulls buckled and shattered, the biometallic alloy that had proven so resilient against the Gorn crumbling like papier-mâché. The Valkyrie shuddered under the impact, alarms shrieking as systems overloaded and failed. Dylan clung to the armrests, his palms sweating as the neural link flooded him with damage reports. Rex yelped in pain, his enhanced senses overwhelmed by the barrage of hostile energy. "All ships evasive maneuvers," Dylan shouted over the comm, his voice barely audible over the cacophony of destruction. "Get out of range." But it was too late. One by one the Fenrir ships fell, their crews consumed by the searing light. The Valkyrie shuddered and lurched, its engines guttering out as the energy beam sliced through its hull. In a moment of grim clarity, Dylan understood the terrible truth. This new enemy, whoever or whatever they were, had found a way to counter Earth's defenses. The enzyme that had been their salvation against the Gorn was useless here, as ineffective as the conventional weapons of old. Smoke filled the cockpit, acrid and choking. The ship's life support systems were failing, the oxygen supply dwindling with each passing second. Dylan knew he had only moments left. With a shaking hand, he reached for the comm, opening a channel to Starbase Alpha. "This is Captain Dylan Campbell of the Valkyrie," he said, his voice ragged with pain. "The unknown vessel is hostile. Repeat, the unknown vessel is hostile. Our weapons are useless against it. The fleet is lost." He paused, coughing as the smoke seared his lungs. "You have to warn Earth, tell them to evacuate as many people as possible, and don't stop searching for a way to fight back. As long as we're still breathing, we can't give up." Dylan looked down at Rex, his vision blurring. The loyal dog met his gaze, his eyes filled with a fierce, unwavering devotion. "Rex," Dylan whispered, his voice barely audible over the ship's death throes. "You have to lead the survivors. Keep them safe. No matter what happens, you can't let this enemy win." Rex whined softly, pressing his muzzle against Dylan's hand. In that moment, a lifetime of companionship passed between them, a bond that transcended the boundaries of species and circumstance. The Valkyrie shuddered one final time, its hull rupturing in a blossom of fire and shrapnel. As the darkness rushed in to claim him, Dylan held tight to one final thought. Even in the face of this overwhelming foe, Earth would never stop fighting. As long as the bonds between humans and animals endured, there was still hope. No matter how dark the night, dawn would come again. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.